Madam President, I rise tonight to talk about something that we don't see very often in this body. We saw a bipartisan effort today to move to regular order, to actually put a bill on this floor, to debate its merits, to make amendments to it, and to try to find a compromise position to do the right thing for people across many states in our country that have been devastated by untoward disasters just in this last year. As many of us know all too well, our country has suffered a series of unprecedented national disasters over the last year, and actually it's a trend that's gone on for the last couple of years. We've had serious damages done by unprecedented disasters. In July, August, and November alone in 2018, wildfires in California displaced hundreds and even thousands of people and destroyed thousands of homes in a very short period of time. These fires were the deadliest and most destructive in California history. In August 2018, Hurricane Lane dropped 52 inches of rain over 5 days, causing heavy flooding and mudslides. It ranks as the second wettest tropical cyclone in United States history, behind Hurricane Harvey in 2017. In September 2018, Hurricane Florence caused catastrophic damage in North and South Carolina. It flooded homes, schools, and businesses. A week after the hurricane, major highways were still underwater. In November 2018, a 7.0 magnitude earthquake hit Alaska and damaged highways and buildings and displaced hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals. Earlier this year, an EF4 tornado flattened Lee County, Alabama, and took 23 lives, Madam President, including 3 children, injuring hundreds of others. Today, our friends in the Midwest are suffering devastating flooding. Roads have been washed away, fields look like lakes, and many cattle have been drowned. As a matter of fact, this flood hit just at the wrong time during calving, and we know that thousands of calves have been lost, Madam President. My home state of Georgia has not been immune and is indeed at this moment reeling from a natural disaster as well. On October 10, 2018, Hurricane Michael made landfall on the Florida Panhandle as a Category 4 hurricane. It was one of the strongest storms to ever hit the United States. Over the next few hours, Hurricane Michael barred through Florida, tore through southwest Georgia, moved on to South Carolina and North Carolina, doing immense damage. In a matter of hours, homes were flattened, tracts of timber destroyed, crops ruined, and people's lives were radically changed forever. This hurricane hit at exactly the time when most crops were ready to be harvested. Cotton, peanuts, pecans, timber. It was devastating. Nothing was spared. Today, agriculture is Georgia's top industry and our #1 economic driver. Before the hurricane, farmers in my state were expecting a record harvest in many commodity categories. Instead, just at the time when harvesting was starting, Hurricane Michael hit and crops were completely destroyed across most of our state. Our farmers are resilient, however. They've weathered droughts before, low-yield harvest, and poor farm economies. They've suffered through several years of low commodity prices as well. But they've never faced anything quite like this before, Madam President. The strength and magnitude of this hurricane indeed was unprecedented. Shortly after the hurricane hit, President Trump, Vice President Pence, Secretary of Agriculture, all came down to Georgia with Senator Isaacson and me to view the damage. Together, we toured the state, saw the devastation, and heard directly from farmers about the tough road to recovery. It was interesting, Madam President, that these farmers really weren't asking for anything. They were actually praying for their brethren in other parts of the country that were also being ravaged by these disasters. The scene we saw that day is something I personally will never forget. We visited one of the largest pecan farms in the world, actually, certainly in Georgia, and saw the damage in our fields. In this one farm alone, these 2 brothers had started from nothing. They had 800 acres, pecan trees, just beautiful pecan trees. These are maturing pecan trees, just completely uprooted. at a very time when the heavy harvest was sitting right there on the trees. In fact, when I was there, you couldn't walk on the ground. It was just a solid carpet of pecans on the ground, literally ruined. Crop insurance will help with this year's losses somewhat, but as anybody who knows, agricultural insurance only covers part of the loss. The thing it won't cover are the trees that were damaged, particularly in this 800-acre tract that we personally saw with the Vice President. Here, there is no insurance. Today, in the agricultural industry, there's no way to insure this machine called a pecan tree that produces pecans. You can insure part of the crop, but you can't insure the trees. It takes about 10 years, some varieties a little less, but about 10 years to start getting a crop from those new trees. So you can see, for them, this is truly a generational loss. When they saw the devastation, the Trump administration told Georgia farmers and other farmers around the Southeast from this particular hurricane they would have their backs. And they have actually moved to do just that. President Trump said farmers really got hurt, especially here in Georgia, but we're going to get it taken care of. Vice President Pence said, we will rebuild these crops in these communities. We will restore Southwest Georgia. We will restore the Sun Belt region bigger and better than ever before. And they've acted accordingly, consistently, since October of last year. The state of Georgia immediately stepped up and offered tax credits, short-term financing, bridge loans, and other forms of direct assistance to those impacted. The federal government has been a little slower to act. It's been 5 months since Hurricane Michael ravaged the Southeast, and this Congress has done very little to help people who are barely hanging on right now. That's shameful. It's time to do something about it. This aid should have been funded as soon as we had an estimate of the damage, which was really a mere few weeks after the hurricane came through in October. Instead, disaster aid got caught up in a partisan spending battle here in the Senate, and in typical Washington fashion, Congress kicked the can down the road. It's totally unacceptable that Washington's intransigence continues to threaten the livelihoods of the very people who sent us here to represent them. If we don't help these people right now, they may lose their businesses, their farms, their livelihoods, in some cases their families, through no fault of their own. That's the reality we're facing here. Every night, farmers in my state get on their knees and pray that help will soon come. They pray their lenders will show compassion when their bridge loans are maturing, as they are literally today. They pray they won't go bankrupt. They pray they'll be able to provide for their families. And yes, they're praying for other people around the country who have been devastated just like they have. Senator Johnny Isakson has been a workhorse in this entire effort. He and I, along with several other senators from southeastern states, have introduced a standalone supplemental disaster relief bill that we just had a vote on merely an hour ago. This bill passed the motion to proceed 90-10. Madam President, I'm very proud to be a member tonight of a body that's agreed to put this on the floor and do what the Senate is supposed to do, and that is to debate a bill, amend it, and then vote on its passage. This particular bill, among other things, for states like California and other parts of the country, includes $3 billion for agriculture. This is specifically disaster relief for our farmers and ranchers around the country. And these funds are for states like Georgia, Florida, Alabama, the Carolinas, that's North Carolina, South Carolina, Alaska, Hawaii, California, Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, and Kansas that are all battling natural disasters right now and over the past year. I would also add that our colleagues from the upper Midwest have really moved very quickly and have been very reasonable so that we can include in the language here flexibility to make sure their needs are met as well. Mr. President, I also want to thank and take a moment to thank our colleagues here for being very reasonable about needs in other parts of our country. I really think that what the President has done with Puerto Rico needs to be called out. The Trump administration has been resolute in their support of the people of Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria and Hurricane Irma hit the island. To date, $40 billion has already been allocated, and another $50 is potentially going their way, depending on how things happen in the next 5 years or so, to help Puerto Rico recover from recent hurricanes. That's a potential of over $90 million potential. To ensure Puerto Rico continues to have the resources it needs to recover, this disaster relief bill includes $600 million in additional nutritional assistance for the most vulnerable families in Puerto Rico, since that relief, that aid, actually runs out this week. Some members of this body argue we should allocate more funding for Puerto Rico. I would remind them that this is the same level of funding that they have previously supported. In addition, Puerto Rico's own representative in Congress, Jennifer Gonzalez-Colon, supports our bill. She said, and I quote, "This bill puts my constituents one step closer to receiving the assistance they need to continue the long path toward recovery, and I look forward to its swift passage." Madam President, this bipartisan disaster relief package is a win for our farmers. It's a win for families and businesses who were devastated by historical hurricanes in the southeast, wildfires in the west, and it's a win for the people of Puerto Rico who the President has previously helped. Every day we continue debating this issue is a day that people across the country face crippling uncertainty. Today, I call on each of us to put our individual political interests aside and do the right thing for these people who are depending on us right now. Time is of essence. People back home are counting on us to get this done. Madam President, in conclusion, this discussion reminds us of a bigger issue. The funding we're debating here today is by definition borrowed money. Because of Washington's intransigence over the last 40 years and its inability to get its financial house in order over the last few decades, coupled with this debt crisis we have today, we're losing the ability to do the right thing, whether it's medical research, infrastructure, education, or responding to national disasters. Moving forward, we will not be able to continue dealing with these emergencies and crises if we don't have a functioning federal government that can pay its bills and keep its financial house in order. Today, I ask each of my colleagues here for your individual support on this disaster relief package. I also ask that going forward we have a serious debate about tackling this debt crisis and responsibly funding the federal government on time every year so we can help the American people when they're counting on us the most. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor, and I note the absence of a quorum.